from Renaissance-style chateaux, grand country estates, architectural glass masterpieces.
These are the remarkable homes
Simply breathtaking.
and magnificent landmarks
One day, my son, all this will be yours.
at the very heart of Britain's spectacular history.
I have never seen one like this.
Join me
I need to get there with all speed. Onwards, driver.
and a host of celebrities
Oh, crikey.
with a passion for the past
Kaboom! Wish me luck.
as we travel the length and breadth of the nation,
It is between the walls.
and with unparalleled behind-the-scenes access.
From the highest heights
Now I'm through my blind panic.
to the deepest depths.
We'll uncover the secrets
my goodness.
still hidden within these breathtaking buildings.
These are the places that nobody else gets to see.
And explore the riches
How spectacular.
and treasures of one of our most loved institutions.
This is an amazing story. Come on, I want to know the end. I want to know the end.
Welcome to the secrets of the National Trust.
Today, I'm at a Georgian Manor in Cheshire to tell the tale of a huge inheritance, daring bareback riding, abandonment, scandal, and even brain surgery.
Tucked behind a protective wall and moat, patrolled by an ancient herd of fallow deer, and home for 300 years to the Tudor Earls of Warrington and Stamford. This is Dunham Massie.
Dunham Massie has been the dramatic setting of one family's campaign to maintain tradition in the face of scandal, financial decline, and even war.
I'll be going behind the scenes,
You don't let people come down here normally?
No, this is very much off the visitor route.
to uncover the secrets of a rogue Earl whose scandalous love affair shocked polite society.
He's marrying somebody who has no privilege or wealth in her background at all.
Shock horror.
As they strip the house of treasures,
George, Harry and Catherine shoot off and take it all.
Yeah, they took it.
and I discover an extraordinary Edwardian countess who transformed this lavish mansion into a military hospital during the Great War.
So that's where we're standing. Oh, goodness me, there's the beds ranged down either side.
And reveal how her son Roger, the 10th Earl, waged a lifelong campaign to restore all of Dunham Massie's riches.
Yes, he was retrieving the collection that had been dispersed, but he was also a hoarder.
Yeah.
Joining me is Nigel Havers, who's found a Victorian gold mine of his own.
250 costumes are kept inside.
We actually froze the entire collection ourselves.
And Lewis Emmerich has gone off limits on the Dunham Massie estate.
So the sanctuary itself's a bit of a secret.
Oh, yeah.
Am I allowed to say it?
Yeah.
Dunham Massie has been the stage for the dramatic lives of 10 generations over 4 centuries.
It was the seat of the Earls of Stamford and Warrington, and it was the second Earl, George Booth, who rebuilt the house as we see it today in the 1730s.
George Booth was smart enough to marry a wealthy heiress, and by the late 18th century, they'd built up extraordinary collections of art, spectacular Huguenot silver, and work by the most famous woodcarver of all time, Grinling Gibbons. Dunham Massie's fortunes continued to prosper across another 4 generations.
But by 1845, Dunham Massie's wealth and status was under serious threat. That's when it passed into the hands of the teenage 7th Earl, George Harry Grey, who shocked polite society by marrying a beautiful bareback rider.
And today, I'm meeting the Trust's Katie Taylor to hear about the early years of this rogue Earl.
George Harry, then, presumably, the boy.
Yeah,
And the girl?
it's his sister, Lady Margaret.
So it looks like an idyllic childhood.
It was at this point, but then quite early. They lost both of their parents, 1835 and 1838, so grew up looked after by their grandfather, who was notoriously quite a cold fish.
This must have been really difficult for them to lose both your parents.
Yeah, but they still had a life of privilege and they had the best of everything. They were a very wealthy family, but there's
but
nothing
money
to be
can't
said.
buy love, no. So what happened then?
The sixth Earl, so George Harry's grandfather, died when George Harry was just 18.
So he inherits the earldom at 18?
At 18, yeah, and he becomes one of the wealthiest men in the country overnight.
So at the age of just 18, George Harry was undoubtedly one of the most eligible bachelors in 19th century Britain. He had a title, 4 huge estates stretching across 8 counties, and a yearly income of £90,000, equivalent to £10 million in today's money. Kate is taking me into the Grand Gallery to explain just how he handled this newfound wealth and status.
After such a catalogue of tragedies, how did he cope?
He spends money like water in the early days of his earldom, and he's lavishing money on all of his houses and his estates, and at the same time...
Having a good time.
He's having a wonderful time with this newfound freedom that he's got. He was a dream catch for a young woman. He was the wealthiest man. He was also very handsome. I've got a miniature of him to show you, of him as a young man. We've brought it out of the store especially to show you today.
Oh, look at him.
So that's him painted by Ross, who was a miniaturist to Queen Victoria.
Yeah.
And you can tell he's an Earl because that's the Earl's coronet above the top there.
But he must have been expected then to be on the lookout for a wealthy wife, a wife of rank. So what happened?
He falls in love with a woman he meets in Hyde Park. She is a horse seller.
George Harry's eligible head was turned by Catherine Cox, a resourceful woman of 29, who earned her living displaying horses for sale to the upper classes, cruising in London's fashionable Hyde Park.
This is hardly the sort of woman that society would have expected him to marry.
No, I mean, she's a working girl, she's not educated, she's been the mistress of at least 2 other men that we know of, and he meets her doing her job, which is parading round Hyde Park, showing off these fabulous horses.
Bareback riding on occasions.
There's suggestion of bareback riding.
But this must have been a scandal like no other. I mean, he's expected to marry certainly somebody of equal standing to him.
He is descended from royalty, and he's marrying somebody who has no privilege or wealth in her background at all.
Shock horror.
George Harry rebelled against all that was expected of him, and instead shunned tradition and married for love.
Smitten, clearly.
Smitten, completely besotted.
And this is her?
This is Catherine.
She's amazingly beautiful. Is it an accurate portrayal, do you think? Do you think she looked like that?
Fairly accurate, yeah. There's quite a few representations of her, both in portraits and in engravings like this, and it's pretty spot on.
Is it a whirlwind romance? Does he sort of...
Yes, they get married quite quickly. Outside of London, it's not a big society wedding. It's quite quiet, quite quick.
It may have been a simple wedding away from society's disapproving glare and with no family present, but the deed was done. And upon returning to Dunham Massie in 1856, there was no more hiding for the couple as they began to build their life together with no expense spared.
She's brought into a stately pile. How does she react?
Well, we think she took to it quite well, actually. I mean, he's spending a fortune on her and
What's
treating her
not
very
to
well.
like?
Exactly.
George Harry also commissioned gifts for his new bride, and Katie's taken one of the most precious out of storage to show me.
See here, one of the gifts that he bought for her, which is a gold and diamond encrusted pocket watch. And on the front are Catherine's new initials.
With the coronet above?
With the coronet above, so the S and W are interlinked. And then on the reverse, picked out in diamonds
that's
again.
S&W Stamford and Warrington?
Yeah, so that's her new title.
And what's that?
And that's the lily of the valley. And in the Victorian language of flowers, lily of the valley symbolises a return to happiness. Like a pocket watch.
Romantic, isn't he? Or a young romantic, actually.
Yeah.
How did society take to them?
Not quite as well. Quite recently after their marriage, Catherine managed to secure a box at the opera right next to Queen Victoria's box. And the Queen said that she wouldn't attend the opera that season if that lady was sitting next to her.
Snubbed by the monarch? That must have made headlines.
Yeah, it was certainly reported in the New York Times.
New York? Got as far as New York?
Yes, but it might not have been reported in British press because they were a bit more generous about the monarchy at that point.
So was that the final straw?
Not quite. There was another incident at the Knutsford races at one point. Catherine approached a group of ladies who all turned their backs on her, turned their parasols on her, and refused to talk to her, shunned her, basically.
So Cheshire housewives have been on the go a long while?
Yes, yeah.
Dreadful.
So at that point, they decided to quit Dunham, pack up all the belongings, pack up the paintings, take all the silver, and leave for their other estates at Enville and Bradgate.
So that was it? Take the stuff, we're going, and off they went to Enville?
That was it, yeah.
Wow.
Polite society's victory was to be Dunham Massie's defeat, as the couple left with all the valuables they could carry and rode off into the sunset to live happily in one of George Harry's other estates at Enville, leaving this grand house a shell to be abandoned for almost 50 years. It wasn't until 1905, when William, the 9th Earl, and his wife, the Countess Penelope, moved in, that Dunham Massie was resurrected as a classic Edwardian country house. But the First World War ushered in a very different era. I'm meeting the Trust's Jessica Webb, who can tell me how the formidable Lady Penelope took charge of the house and dealt with the changes that war brought.
Oh, what a glorious dining room. Delightful.
Yeah, well, it is shown as a dining room at the moment, but it wasn't always a dining room. During the Edwardian period, it was actually a saloon, and they held lavish parties in here, ballroom dancing.
Oh, well, it is a party room, isn't it?
Then it changed again, actually, during the First World War. It had a really important use during the war.
As what?
There were lots of houses over the First World War that were turned into auxiliary hospitals. And we start to see, in about 1916, Penelope, who was the Countess at the time, writing letters to her son saying, I'm thinking about offering the house as a hospital. But she said it wouldn't do for Tommies, it would have to be for officers. But when it does open in 1917, it is Tommies that were recuperating her.
Why didn't she think it would be for Tommies? Was she being a bit snooty?
She was being a bit snooty. She was a bit snobbish.
You see, I thought she would have learned from earlier on in this family's history that it doesn't do to be too snooty.
Yeah, and Roger, her son, was quite the opposite to her, so we don't know if it was his influence that perhaps changed her mind.
So that's where we're standing. Oh, goodness me, there's the beds ranged down either side.
Yeah, that's right. So originally, I think there were about 16 beds in this room, but over the period of the hospital being open, it went up to 24 beds. And this was the main ward, but there were other rooms that were turned into wards as well, as the casualties increased throughout the war.
So this is a list of who came?
Yeah, so there were 282 patients altogether.
Trench foot,
yeah.
Bronchitis,
shrapnel wounds,
gunshot wounds.
Yeah, shell shock. So they saw all kind of illnesses and injuries over the period, and yeah, some became more severe. I think initially they were more minor injuries, but I think as they needed the beds, they were sending whoever they could really to here to recuperate.
Did they all survive?
Yeah, fortunately here at the hospital actually no one died, which I think is probably quite unusual, but there certainly were patients that underwent quite serious operations here and then had to be transferred onto sort of more medical hospitals.
We've got some lovely pictures here. So
yeah.
Private Bailey, Private Pinder, Private Stewart in a kilt, and
we had quite a lot of Scottish patients, and actually one of them was Johnston, and he had brain surgery actually at the foot of the grand staircase in this house, and he did go on then.
She tosses off like it, and he had brain surgery at the foot of the stairs. Talk about I'll go to the foot of our stairs and have brain surgery.
Throughout all the upheaval and trauma of war, one thing stayed pretty much as it had been since medieval times: the parkland. From the mid-1800s, thousands of visitors from Manchester came here by canal and on the newly built railways. Lewis Emmerich, another townie, has come to see what drew them here.
The park was first recorded in 1362, when the deer roamed wild. In 1748, it was enclosed by the second Earl of Warrington, with an impressive red brick wall.
Spread over 300 acres, it's now a fraction of what it once was when enjoyed by nobility down the centuries. A royal license was needed to establish a deer park, and the cost, added to the exclusivity, made them the ultimate status symbol. I'm meeting Andrew Wiley, Dunham Massie's lead ranger, to see one of the oldest buildings in the park. the deer house, here since 1740.
You know, given the brick, like, it looks almost like a house.
Well, that's part of the point, is that you've got to imagine the entire parkland as a statement of wealth and significance.
Yeah.
So this was sending the message that even where I store my animal feed is probably nicer than your house. So any visitor coming to meet the Earl of Warrington would know straight away this is a pretty important guy.
It's not actually functional, then?
At the moment, no. So historically, they would have stored the fodder upstairs, and then these hay rocks downstairs, they'd have put all the fodder through to those.
What do they do around here? Where do the deer not use it at all, then?
They'll use it for shelter, so if it's raining, the big bucks go in there.
Yeah.
But again, the does are too flighty. They'll be too timid to go in there because they can't see predators coming.
Oh, right.
So you'll find a few big bucks lying up, keeping warm and dry, but that's about it, really.
So if they're not wandering around the house, where are they?
So quite a lot of the park is going over to what we call deer sanctuary, so there's no public access. So that's where they can go to relax and get away from the visitor pressure.
So the sanctuary itself's a bit of a secret.
Oh, yeah.
Am I allowed to see it?
Yeah, I think we can.
Oh, nice one.
A third of the parkland at Dunham is given over to the deer sanctuary. While this is off limits to the estate's 600,000 annual visitors, I'm having a ranger's eye view inside this restricted area.
Well, this is incredible, Andrew. I don't think I've been this close to a herd of deer before while I've just gone about the business. And where do they come from, the deer on this parkway?
So our herd can be traced back to the original Norman introductions. So going back to 1066, the Normans brought them across for hunting. Then about the 17th century, when the park wall was built, they'd have been herded to jump over the wall into the park. Then, because the ground on the park was lower, they can't jump back out. So they've been here ever since.
Oh, right. So what delineates them, Andrew?
So with the bucks, it's easiest because they've got the antlers, and the antlers will get progressively larger.
Yeah.
So the deer grow antlers each year and shed them each year.
OK.
And with the does, it sounds odd, but the youngsters have what we call cuddly faces.
Yeah.
A bit like teddy bears.
Yeah.
And the older they get horse-faced.
There is now a herd numbering around 150 here. These days, they may not be hunted by the lords of the manor, but they do face a different kind of danger.
It's really that visitor-deer interaction which causes us the problems. People like to get the photos, the selfies, or they think they're helping the deer out by breaking branches off the trees to feed them the leaves.
Yeah.
But all they're doing is hand-taming the deer and introducing artificial behaviours, so it's not ideal.
Visitors are encouraged to stay out of the sanctuary by log barriers called dragon's teeth that act as a visual marker of its boundaries, but allow the deer to come and go as they please.
So this one's collapsed last week, so my team have been working all morning. We're almost finished, we've got a few more posts to put in. So if you want to give us a hand, we'll be using the post hole borer and then digging the holes, putting the posts in, fibbing up.
Lead the way, Andrew.
OK.
Let's go.
So if we get it in position first.
Guess that goes right in the centre.
Right in the
there,
middle,
does it?
that's right. Right.
That's great.
Next job is get spade, make the hole a bit bigger.
All right, OK.
So I'll just start squaring this hole off, if you can just, once I've done a bit.
How important is it to maintain these?
So back in the 80s when the trust took over, there was issues that the deer had never seen visitors before.
Right.
So at that time, there were far more deer in the park, and they had far more disturbance. Over 100 deer in a year would die from disease and parasite burden. And that's when the vet said, what you need is a sanctuary area, hence what we're doing today.
Oh, brilliant.
It gives the deer somewhere to relax and actually de-stress, which for their health is very important.
Woo. What's next, mate?
Right, the easy bit now, just filling the hole back in.
Oh, right.
First job.
Each dragon's tooth weighs 25 kilos and is made from treated softwood that should keep visitor and attraction at a safe and happy distance for the next 20 years.
Let's go and have a beer.
Away from the wildlife, back at the main house, 100 years have passed since life at Dunham Massie was far from tranquil, when war raged and traumatised soldiers came here from the front line. Penelope, Countess of Stamford, oversaw all the patients treated in Dunham Massie's makeshift wards, and through it all, she was supported by her son Roger, who, although unfit for active service, was aide to a British general. Roger's father, William, had passed away in 1910, making him the 10th Earl of Stamford and Warrington, and meaning his support for his mother was all the more important. Jessica has uncovered a collection of personal letters between mother and son, written during this cataclysmic period in British history.
Now, here we've got letters addressed to dearest boy. What are these?
So these are from Penelope to her son. So Roger at the time was aide-de-camp to General Lloyd in London, and so he wasn't really here at the hospital, but he liked to know what was going on. And the letters are quite formal between mother and son.
Dearest boy, the 16 patients arrived at 11:30 today. 8 of them are in bed and are likely to remain there for some days, though no one is seriously ill. They're delighted with their surroundings. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the way she signs it. Your very loving mother, Penelope Stamford, in case he forgets the name.
Yeah. This one's nice as well. So we know that they had a telephone at the time, and it wasn't used very regularly, but there's reference to it in this letter. So she says, this evening at 5:30, a telephone message came through. Expect 16 patients tomorrow at 11:30. We were pleased and so uplifted.
The ward looks so nice, and the Great Hall looks very nice and simple, with flags of the Allies and colonies hanging above the mantelpiece on either side of your father's picture and opposite it.
Yes, yeah. So she goes into a lot of detail,
It's
letting
great.
him know
It does.
what it's like.
Suddenly you see it coming to life as a hospital, don't you?
These letters are full of British stiff upper lip, but Penelope must still have faced incredible upheaval and trauma as she helped look after the Tommies from the front. And while she might not show it, the emotion of this time is summed up by a former patient who wrote of his gratitude for the care he received at Dunham Massie.
It's quite an emotional letter and one that really sums up, I think, the time that the Tommies had here recuperating. So he writes, Your Ladyship will, I hope, both understand and forgive the impulse which prompts an old patient of Stamford Hall to write to you at this season of the year. We Tommies, I'm afraid, took both our hardship and others' kindness as a matter of course.
Oh, gosh.
And it continues.
Well, he finishes at the end. As one of the many who were fortunate enough to experience the pleasures of your generous hospitality, may I offer your ladyship my humble but heartfelt thanks, with sincere wishes for health and prosperity. In 1922, I remain your ladyship's obedient servant, Walt G. Hammond. 4 years after the end of the war. He can't forget the hospitality.
Yeah.
In beautiful Cheshire countryside sits the stunning estate of Dunham Massie, home since Tudor times to 10 Earls of Stamford and Warrington, all bringing incredible changes of fortune to the house as each generation came and went. But it was the headstrong young 7th Earl who'd inflict the most damage, marrying a commoner.
She's amazingly beautiful.
And then doing a bunk with the family silver and everything else he could carry once society voiced their disapproval.
Off they went to Enville.
That was it, yeah.
Wow.
But Dunham Massie would strike back once Roger, the 10th and final Earl, took charge in 1917.
He was obsessed by his family history and would dedicate his life to trying to retrieve everything that had been taken away by George, Harry, and his beautiful bareback riding wife.
The missing items were rare and incredibly valuable collectibles and had been recklessly sold and squandered by the rogue 7th Earl to pay for his gambling habit and extravagant lifestyle. Bit by bit, Roger the 10th Earl found success in returning treasures to the family home, including a 1,000-piece silver collection, and I've come prepared to help bring it back to its best.
So putting my gloves on then,
that's
and
the first
getting to
thing you do.
work.
Yeah, the acids in our skin can speed up the tarnish of silver, so when we handle silver, we're always wearing gloves.
What do you clean it with then? With just a silver cloth? There's
So,
no
yeah, there's a
liquid
silver
here.
cloth here. There's a brush for getting any loose dust off the surface first, because we don't want to scratch it, and then we just buff it off with a clean cloth, so...
Right, so
Pick a brush,
I'm
these are
taking the
goat
dust.
hair. Yeah.
Very important that they're goat
Yeah.
hair, is it?
Well, it's just really soft. And when we're brushing as well, we also do a bit of an inspection, just make sure that there's no new damage, you know, that everything is as it should be.
Right. So why was Dunham Massie so famous for its silver collection?
It's a really good quality silver collection. It was acquired mainly by the 2nd Earl of Warrington, who built the house here. and he was buying silver from French migrants, Huguenots, who were coming to England at the end of the 17th century.
So is this the best silver he could buy?
Yeah, they were the best craftsmen of their time, really.
And you've got a lot of it?
We've got a lot of it, yeah, the largest collection of it in the National Trust.
But then George, Harry and Catherine shoot off and take it all.
Well, yeah, it was their property to take, but, yeah, they took it, which means that for a long time it wasn't here where it belonged, really.
How did it come back?
The last Earl, Lord Stamford Roger, he spent his adult life basically trying to reacquire things for the collection, and the silver was a big part of that.
It took decades of detective work, scouring auctions and house sales, but Roger managed to retrieve almost 2/3 of this unique collection.
He got all the auction catalogues in advance and knew what was coming up, so we know that this one was in this auction here. There we go, so we've got George II toilet service.
With moulded borders engraved with the arms of Harry, 4th Earl of Stamford, and his wife, Lady Mary Booth, in borders of shells, rosettes and strap work.
And interestingly, it's by a female silversmith, Magdalene Feline.
It's so beautiful. I mean, that coat of arms is absolutely crisp as the day it was made, isn't it?
Yeah.
How old is it?
Well, it's 1754. The hallmark is here, so it gives us a date.
Isn't that astonishing?
Yeah, so we think the second Earl bought it for his daughter for her 50th birthday.
So why is it here in the state bedroom?
This toilet service is here because it would have been used in a bedroom like this as part of a kind of getting ready, a morning ritual for ablutions.
You see, none of your plastic tubes here and your little bits of unguents. You've got beautiful stuff, isn't it glorious?
But they're all made for holding things like that,
Yeah.
so the casters for holding liquids and oils and scrubs and things like that. So they all have the same purpose, just slightly more elegant than we'd have today.
Rather more beautiful.
Yeah.
So Roger must have been well pleased that he managed to get all this back. It was obviously very important to him to sort of restore not just the family's fortunes, but the family's status in terms of its collection.
Yeah, he very much saw himself as the custodian of Dunham Massie and felt the pressure of needing to bring things back to the collection, things that had been here and belonged here.
How wonderful. And because of his assiduous searching out of auction catalogues, we have all this beautiful silver here to look at.
Yeah, and the Trust are still acquiring pieces today, just as Lord Stamford would have done if they'd come up in auction as well.
Well, that's 3 done. Only 997 to go, then.
Hunting down the lost treasures meant a huge amount of paperwork, and Katie is taking me behind the scenes to uncover the secrets of just how diligent, organised and thorough Roger could be.
Only taking me to glamorous places.
We're going deep into the bowels of Dunham, into the cellars. We have to use the whole house for storage because there's such a big collection, and we've got some of the stores to show you.
But you don't let people come down here normally, then?
No, this is very much off the visitor route. It's one of our early wine cellars, beautiful brick vaulted cellar, and we have to make the most of it for storage. So,
What is a plastic tent? What's in here? Goodness me.
The tent is dry because we dehumidify it. So it's a great place to store paper, and it's great for photographs as well because it's so cool down here.
Country life.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. So
that's
these
one
go
of our
back...
early editions from 1909, and they go right up until... There's our Deb.
There's the girl in pearls with...
Yeah, she has got pearls. She's got pearl earrings.
She has 17 birds in her hat.
Yeah.
Isn't this
So
astonishing?
Lord Stamford didn't throw anything away, and he's kind of infamous in the family for that. Early punch.
Magazines looked so beautiful then,
I
didn't
know, it's
it?
a beautiful drawing, isn't it?
So this paints a picture in a way of Roger. Yes, he was retrieving the collection that had been dispersed, but he was also a hoarder.
Yeah, he was definitely keeping his own things and collecting his own things, and we know that he knew where everything was. One of his nephews, Oliver, had been for a walk in the park and borrowed a newspaper to wrap his boots in to go home. And a few days later, he got a telegram from his uncle asking for his newspaper back.
Roger was a far from typical Earl. A friend of Ramsay MacDonald, the socialist leader at the time, he even entertained the deposed Emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, who became a lifelong friend. He would never marry and lived at Dunham Massie alongside his beloved mother Penelope until she died in 1959.
It seems as if it was, if not lonely, then a loner. He liked being on his own.
Yeah, I think he was a very private man. He did like his family and spent time with his family. He had 2 nephews and a niece, and they came to visit him often with his sister. And he certainly had friendships and good friendships with people. But he was also a very private man and did live life on his own, yeah.
And from the National Trust point of view, thank goodness he was a hoarder, because he's left you an amazing legacy.
Yeah, we've got layers and layers of stories to tell in this house, and that's all thanks to Lord Stamford.
Well, off you pop. Just leave me down here for a couple of days and I'll work my way through Punch, Country Life, The Aeroplane and The Sphere. Fascinating, isn't it?
There's another Victorian-era treasure trove that Nigel Havers has tracked down. It's in Kent, at Smallhythe Place, home to the remarkable collection of costumes worn by the actress Dame Ellen Terry.
This humble retreat belies the drama contained within. 250 costumes worn by Ellen Terry are kept inside. Ellen Terry was a celebrity, as well as a highly respected Shakespearean actress, with a career spanning 60 years. During that time, she amassed an extraordinary costume collection. And on her retirement, she brought it all to her country cottage. On her death in 1928, her daughter Edie turned Smallhythe Place into a shrine, showcasing her mother's life, both on and off the stage. Conservator Susanna Mayer is taking me behind the scenes to see the crowning glory of her costume legacy, the beetle wing dress, worn to play Lady Macbeth in 1888. Oh, fantastic. This is it, the dress, the infamous dress. Now, Susanna, tell me, are they really beetle wings?
They are beetle wings, but they'd be collected from Thailand and India. But when beetles mated, they shed their wings, so actually no beetles were killed in the making of the dress. But they have this amazing iridescent quality about them. Ellen Terry had a huge input into the design and making of her costumes, so she was always involved from the start. She worked very closely with her designer, but their attention to detail was amazing.
The dress caused a stir when worn in 1888. And 120 years later, after much wear and tear, this fragile costume was desperately in need of conservation at a cost of £110,000.
It had to go away to a specialist studio in Brighton, and there was 15,000 hours of work, just tiny, kind of, you know, really methodical work.
I'm not entirely surprised. I think it's brilliant. Only 6 costumes are on display in the house at any one time. The other 244 are hidden away in this unassuming storeroom, and I'm feeling very privileged to get a glimpse inside. This is where they're all kept?
Yes, a bit like a morgue for costumes, I think of it.
And dead bodies.
Yeah, so all these dull boxes, but they're all full of amazing things.
Let's have a look at something.
Yeah, let me show you. OK, let's do this one then.
There we go.
So this is the dress she wore as Imogen and Cymbeline in the late 1890s. When I first saw it, I'd only ever seen black and white images of it, and then when I saw the actual thing, it was quite astonishing. So you get to see
look at that.
The colours of the dress.
How do you prepare the costume for storage?
It takes a lot to pack these costumes. You know, you have to know how to screw up pieces of tissue paper quite expertly.
Yeah. What's in this one?
This one is actually my favourite one. This is the dress she wore as Beatrice at the Lyceum.
Oh.
This needs repacking because the acid-free paper is due to be replaced.
Oh, you have to do that, what?
Every 5 years.
So Susanna is going to show me just how the conservators work with such delicate, precious materials. And this dress in particular needs space, as well as the ultimate in care.
Of all the things we look after, textiles are always the most difficult. Wood and metal, far easier to look after. I mean, you're battling all sorts of things with textiles.
Yeah.
Mould, insects. We have 2 ways of packing this. One is known as a sausage, you'll see why. So you just screw it up, and then you just fold it round like that, and tuck the ends in. So you can start to put that in the sleeve, just very gently. So there we go. But you see how that supports the fabric, because it's when fabric creases that it really becomes under stress. The other thing we use is just called a puff, and you just pretty much get a bit of tissue paper and screw it up into kind of thing like that, which also supports. So I would put that into that bit of the sleeve there, or, for example, or just under there like that. And you see, again, you're just supporting the whole thing.
And I think I'll do the, just stuffing it up.
OK. So, in the end, it starts to feel like you're stuffing a body, really.
It's a long process.
Yeah, it takes an
whoever
hour.
did it last, I mean, he's done a brilliant job because it's hardly creased at all.
No.
In recent years, the staff at Small Hythe have honed these conservation skills after the priceless collection was besieged by woolly bear, not as cuddly as it sounds. What's woolly bear?
It's the larva of the carpet beetle. A carpet beetle will do the same damage as a moth and is not to be ignored.
Can you spray? No, you can't spray it, obviously. Put anything.
No. Well, the only thing you can do is freeze them. So we actually bought a domestic freezer and froze the entire collection ourselves. Then we had to clean it really carefully with a museum vacuum cleaner to make sure that we removed all the dead woolly bears.
Susanna and her team remain vigilant against woolly bear, hopefully extending the life of these beautiful and irreplaceable Victorian costumes for another 100 years. The conservation of all the wonderful treasures in this house, especially the costumes, will, I'm sure, be applauded by Ellen Terry and her adoring fans.
On a vast expanse of medieval parkland sits Dunham Massie, a classic country hall, here since the Tudors. It's a house that's been home to some extraordinary people and witnessed its fair share of scandal.
The Queen said that she wouldn't attend the opera that season if that lady was sitting next to her.
Shock horror. And one that was stripped of all its riches.
They decided to take all the silver.
Wow. Dunham Massie has also faced turbulence, becoming a military hospital in the early 20th century under the stewardship of its then Countess, Penelope.
Did they all survive?
Yeah, fortunately, here at the hospital, actually no one died.
But it was her son Roger, the 10th and final Earl, who dedicated his life to making sure Dunham Massie returned to its 19th century best.
So is this the best silver he could buy?
Yeah, they were the best craftsmen of their time, really.
And I'm going below stairs to meet Henry Catterall, a man who was both his butler and friend, to get a first-hand account of what it was like living here at Dunham Massie.
So where are we now? What's this?
This is the butler's pantry.
Was this area sort of your domain? I mean, did you feel proprietorial, particularly in the earlier days about it? This was your kingdom in a way?
Well, yes, I suppose it was really, this area.
Yeah. I think I'd have liked a little empire like this. So you're working for Roger, the 10th Earl. What did you have to do?
The first job in the morning was to take him his tea up, his early morning tea, to bed. And he used to make me sit on this chair at the side of the bed and give me a piece of text to read. That was usually politics. And I had to read it because he'd ask me questions about it afterwards.
Did he want your opinion about it?
Yeah.
Was that a bit intimidating, a bit?
Well, it was, especially at 7:30 in the morning.
When your brain wasn't really going.
Yeah.
And what was done in here?
Nothing really, apart from giving him his tea in here in the afternoon. I had to keep it clean.
Oh, so he'd come into the butler's pantry for his tea?
Yeah, he'd come and sit there on the edge of the table. And in the winter, I had to light the fire there.
It seems as though, as much as being an employer, he was a friend.
He was. He was a friend. I admired him very much.
Do you miss him?
Yeah. He was like the pinnacle of authority. He was a grand lad.
A lot of people nowadays are uncomfortable with that sort of master-servant relationship. Can you understand that?
Yeah, he never treated me like that, as if I was the underling. I was always on a par with him, so to speak.
When Roger died in 1976, he was without an heir. And after 300 years, there were to be no more Earls of Stamford and Warrington at Dunham Massie.
What do you think Lord Stamford would have made of what's happened to Dunham Massie now, the way it's been looked after? Presumably, he'd be mighty relieved that he'd done his job, done it, and it's going to stay.
He did. The estate's carried on as it was when he was here, and the house is well improved greatly.
So if you had to sum up the 10th Lord Stamford, what would you say of him?
I'd say he was a perfect gentleman, and a very clever one at that.
Dunham Massie has felt the impact of centuries of change both inside and outside the walls of the estate. and spending time within its beautiful and atmospheric rooms has cast its spell.
But what's emerged is that it's the personalities who've lived within these walls, both members of the family itself and members of staff, who've made this place so special.
And thanks to Roger, the 10th and final Earl, the family's history has now been restored.
His final act was to bequeath the house to the National Trust, making sure that none of its contents could leave Dunham Massie again. And in so doing, he ensured not only the survival of the family's legacy, but also that it would live on.